Hello everyone and welcome to the Art of Teaching Art. I'm Mrs. Darby and today I'm going to show you how to create an observational drawing page using gridded sections to draw close-up images of still life. So this is part of the still life project and it will help you explore different materials and different objects in a close-up way, which will allow you to show off your drawing skills. This is my example page and I'm going to show you how I get to this stage, setting up the grid, adding the different papers, and then starting off drawing from a selection of images. And then obviously you can work forward to complete the page. So things that you will need, a selection of art supplies. So I've just gone for pencils, fine liners and biros. You will also need a selection of little papers. Now I've cut these to the correct size for the grid. So I've got coffee stain paper, squared paper, envelope paper, brown paper, and then obviously glue to stick everything in. So let's get started. So first of all, I'm using this grid sheet that I printed out from the computer and I'm just slotting it into the centre of the sketchbook and placing a page over it so you can see the ghost of the grid through the page then. And I'm just using a glue stick to stick my squares down, so I'm using the grid as a guideline to stick on top of. This makes it really easy to get things nice and accurate. So I'm using watercolour paper, coffee stained paper, squared paper, jelly printed paper there, just some more coffee printed paper with some different marks on it. And then I'm using some torn paper. So this is a square from an envelope that I've added on and now a brown square. So I'm thinking about the composition to add them diagonally across the page. So just think about where you place the squares across the page. So now just cutting this one, I'm adding a torn square on for the brown paper. And then the base layer of my page is done with the different papers. So now I'm just finding my images. So I've got a selection of still life images. I printed them in black and white and I'm just making a viewfinder so I can select small sections. So you will want a square shaped viewfinder to match the squares for your picture. So I've just selected a section of the mannequin and I'm just sketching it out in just a 2B pencil. I'm adding tone to this, so shading nice and neatly in one direction, adding those dark areas as well as lighter areas of tone as well. I'm paying attention to the wood texture on the mannequin and adding just areas of darkness where I can. I really like this square actually, where the square paper comes through the pencil and it just adds to that texture of the mannequin. So just finishing off with a 4B pencil, adding those final dark areas. Now moving on to another picture. So I've picked this picture of the tomato and I'm going to be working in pen. So I sketched out lightly in pencil first and then I'm using cross hatching to add the darker areas of pen. I'm just doing a little bit at the edge of the tomato and plate, not the whole thing because I don't want to cover up too much of the watercolour. Now I'm using a lighter cross hatching, so I'm pressing lighter on the page to add some lighter areas and working towards the corner of the square to add that darkness that I can see in the picture. So always referring back to the picture to see what tone I can add. So just adding the final bits, I'm adding some light shading to build up to that spot of highlight that I can see on the tomato to just get that real range of tones. Now I want to draw this next picture on a white square, so I'm just drawing in the grid lines across the piece. So I'm using the grid underneath as a guideline to get the lines nice and straight and just holding my ruler and drawing each square at a time, nice and lightly sketched lines. So now I'm drawing this section of the bottle, so I'm drawing it out in pencil first. I'm actually going to complete this in pencil. And what I'm doing is drawing on the shapes where the highlights are. So really carefully looking at all the detail. And then I'm starting with the darkest areas first. I'm using the ruler to make sure I've got nice, neat, sharp lines for this. So darkest areas first, nice sharp edges, and then some lighter tones as well. So it's really important here to get that mix of dark and light, that contrast from the white of the paper and then the darkness of the pencil. I'm using a 4B or a 6B pencil to add the darker areas and then a 2B pencil to add the lighter areas. So just thinking of this as shapes as opposed to I'm drawing a bottle. I'm just drawing the different shapes that I can see and just making sure I've got those light and dark areas. So just finishing off the shading in the background there and just refining those details. Just moving on to the skull image, I've chosen the coffee stained background and I've got a section of the nose and eye there, so I'm just drawing that out first of all and then I'm going to use fine liner on this. So I'm using cross hatching again, but in a slightly different way this time to try and just make that darker area of the nose and making sure I'm adding in the details. What I'm doing is placing the marks further apart for the areas that I want to be lighter, and then closer together for the areas that I want to be darker. You can't achieve as much tone with this technique with cross-hatching, but I still think it's really effective and it's nice and easy to add a lot of detail within your work. And I'm leaving the majority of the background area of the kind of face free. I'm just adding some textures that I can see on the skull. Now I'm moving on to the next piece. So I've got a bit of the glass ball there, and I'm just drawing it out in pencil. Again, I'm looking at the shapes of the highlights. I am not looking at this as I'm drawing a glass ball. I'm drawing where the highlights are, and then I'm adding my shading. Now I'm doing this in pen, so again using cross-hatching. But remember with this, you can press harder for the darker areas and lighter for the lighter areas, and you can still achieve a range of tones that way. So just adding some more detail here. I decided to swap to a second pen, which was a bit more running out, to do some lighter areas. And I think this is really coming together really nicely. I'm able to add all the details that I can with this with the nib of the pen. And on to the next square, I'm doing this one in pencil again. So I've selected a section of the mannequin with the ribbon. And just the same as I've done with the other pencil squares, I'm doing the darker areas first, finding where those are, and then working kind of downwards across the image to get all of the different tones. So with the ribbon, a good tip is to do the darkest areas first, and then use a 2B pencil to go over the top of those to blend them together, and then blend in the other shapes that you can see. Again with this, you're looking for the different shapes of the shadows and drawing those in, rather than thinking that you're drawing a ribbon. So there we are, we've got 6 different drawings completed in different materials, and I will just carry on working on this page to build up the different squares, working from different still life images to create some different observational drawings. Thanks so much for watching, and have a really great day.